Afternoon, everybody. My name is Todd McClellan. I'm the head coach of the Los Angeles Kings. And I'd like to thank the coaches site for allowing me this time with you at the virtual summit. Today, I'm going to talk to you about coaching, not only today, tomorrow, and beyond. I think it's really important before we start that I clarify that these are my beliefs that I am speaking about today. In no way are they written in stone. It's just something that I believe in and something that I coach towards. The presentation is geared towards coaches of all levels, not only in hockey, but particularly minor hockey and through the pro ages. My goal today is to get you to think about your role as a coach and its evolving role as we move forward. I'm going to start by talking about my path as a player, my path as a coach, and my path also as a parent. As a player, I grew up in Western Canada, played in the Western League, and was drafted to the New York Islanders. I played a little bit with the New York Islanders and then was injured, recovered from that, and was lucky enough to go over to Europe and play. While I was there, I was able to live and reside with the coach. And at that point, I realized spending time with him and planning practices and pre-scouts and tactics, that was something that I wanted to do in the real world. I returned from Europe and began to approach the coaching world by putting my name out there, answering different requests and ads from newspapers. Back then, that's how it was done. And I was lucky enough to obtain the job in North Battleford of the Saskatchewan Junior League. After spending 2 years in North Battleford of the Junior League, I went to the Western Hockey League, the Swift Current Broncos, for 7 years. I turned pro in 2000 with the Minnesota Wild's first farm team in Cleveland of the IHL. Spent 1 year there, 4 years in Houston in the American Hockey League, which remained the primary farm team of the Minnesota Wild. From there, I got my first opportunity to go to the National Hockey League, and I think it was the biggest break or opportunity I got. I ended up with the Detroit Red Wings as an assistant coach. It was an incredible experience. I learned many things while I was there. Many of those lessons I still hold true to my heart and apply on a daily basis in my head coach position. After winning the Stanley Cup in 2008, I moved to San Jose for 7 years, left San Jose and joined the Edmonton Oilers for 4. And I'm currently entering my 3rd year as the head coach of the Los Angeles Kings. Over and above that, I'm a hockey parent. I think that may be one of the most important things that we talk about today. I was fortunate enough to have 2 boys that played this great game. One still does. He continued his career in Germany. He's currently a player over there. He went the NCAA route and was very fortunate to get a good education as well as a great hockey career. My other son played for a number of years. Didn't enjoy the game as much, felt pressure to play it because we were a hockey family, and it took a lot of courage for him to walk away from the game. But he did it at a fairly young age, and he has his own interests and his own beliefs right now, and he's very healthy for it. So that's my path. We're going to use that path as we talk about coaching. As we move forward now, when I was in North Battleford or applying for the job at North Battleford of the Saskatchewan Junior League, went through the interview process. I got the position, and I remember coming home and talking to my fiance, now wife, and saying, okay, I got the job, but now what? And I think that's a question that many of us as coaches, that's a crossroads that we get to. We have the position. We want the position, especially in minor hockey, but now what? Are we prepared for it, or do we have the tools that we need? Do we know what level we're really at? And those are all questions that we may talk about here today throughout the presentation. You've accepted the role of coach. With it becomes a huge responsibility. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the hypocrite coach. And the hypocrite coach is the one that asks the players, the managers, the parents, the team mom, the officials to do more than he or she does. And they exist. They're out there. And I think it's one of the worst things that any one of us as a coach can become. What can you do to avoid that? Well, one, commit yourself. Part-time coaching, it just doesn't work. Commit yourself to it. Give your team, give the players, give the parents the hours and the commitment level that's required so that each of them can have a great experience. And in turn, you'll have a great experience. Don't ask them to do things that you're not prepared to do, whether it's time commitments or disciplinary stuff. Make sure that you're living the words that you preach. Disciplined culture, we're going to talk about those words in a little while. But you have to be the head of that snake for your team or your organization. The next thing that comes up after taking the position, we all immediately think about our team. Who's going to be on the team? How am I going to play our lines? What system are we going to play? All of that's really, really important. And I think it is paramount to clarify those things with your staff, to talk about the group, about how you want to play and what your team wants to look like, what identity and what characteristics they're going to obtain. But while that's happening, don't forget about the individual. The individual is really, really important. Each of them chooses to play on your team for different reasons, and each of them has a different expectation of what they will get from the team itself and from you as the coach. So keep that in mind when you're planning for what your team is going to look like, what it's going to play like, what the culture is going to be like around your team, that the individual is important and it does exist. For the minor hockey coaches, managing the parents and coaching the kids is something that I talk about often. Managing the parents and their expectations, their beliefs is just as difficult as coaching the kids. You've got to have a fine balance between the two. Keeping them all informed, both the coaches, the parents, and the kids is really, really important. Some advice, or some of the best advice that I was ever given as a really young coach, was to plan like a coach and think like a player. And obviously the planning part, practices, drills, schedule, tournament, many of us can do that. But while we're doing it, think like a player. Can we afford to go to a bantam hockey tournament and play 3 games in one day? How much practice time do we need so that the individual gets better? Make sure that we think like the player and plan like the coach. The other thing that comes up quite often, and I notice it around our staff, every team that I've been with, is coaches who have played in the past are sitting there and they're working on the game and perhaps studying video or getting prepared for practice. And often the words that come out of their mouths was, if I only knew this when I played. And I think it's our goal as coaches, especially if you played in the past, to eliminate that question. Share your experience, as many as you possibly can, with the players, and try and get them, if they move on to become coaches, to eliminate this question. As we move forward, I want to talk about a player's mindset and a coach's mindset. And this is very applicable to not only minor hockey players and coaches, but also at the pro level. There's a common belief that there's no I in team. Many locker rooms are plastered with this slogan, with this logo. Many organizations live and breathe it. I don't think that's true. I think it's the exact opposite. I think there's about 20 or 22 I's in every team. You as a coach is an I, the assistant coach is an I, the first line center is an I. He has different beliefs and different wants than maybe the fourth line player. But don't fool yourself. Every one of those players is an individual, and every one of them approaches the game and the team as an individual first. I think we've got to take our heads out of the sand and believe that, and then we have a better chance of being productive. I want for a minute to think, for each of us to think about jumping in the car and driving to a game. I'm going to use the NHL as an example. I jump into my car in Los Angeles. I'm heading downtown. I've got about a 40-minute drive, and as I'm driving in, I'm thinking about the team. I'm thinking about line combinations. Is the power play prepared? How are we going to be tonight? Is the team going to have energy? I hope we fix the penalty kill. What obstacles do we need to overcome in the first period? Those are just examples. When the player gets into the car and he's driving to the exact same location, think Ansi Kopitar jumps in his car and he's driving downtown to the Staples Center in Los Angeles. He's thinking some of those things, but he's also thinking about himself. I hope I'm ready. I hope my line is ready to play. I hope I win the faceoffs that I'm asked of. The power play hasn't been going good. I'm a big part of it. I hope it goes well. Each one of those individuals, regardless of his role, wants to score a goal. And with all of that said, they all want to win the game, but they often start with an I mindset first, where the coach thinks about a team mindset. Let's play the game now, and let's return to the car and drive home. Win or lose, I'm driving home thinking about, again, the questions that I had before the game. What was wrong with the forecheck? Boy, did we ever play with a lot of energy tonight. How come? The power play executed. There may be a few moments where individuals come into play. I wasn't real happy with this individual or that individual, but for the most part, we're taking a team mindset. That's what a coach does. The player jumps into the car on the way home, and maybe he scored 3 goals. He's excited. Boy, what a good night. I felt good. Coach finally put me on the power play. I got to play with Onse Kopitar. That's why I played well. Or vice versa. Maybe he's had a bad night, and I should have got more ice time. Why didn't I get this? Why didn't I get that? If I would have played, we would have won. That happens at the National Hockey League level. That happens at the junior college level, and it certainly happens in minor hockey. And we have to take into consideration how players think. We have to be able to tap their needs on a nightly basis, whether it's in a game situation or in a practice situation, so they feel they get what they want as individuals. Meanwhile, we take into consideration the team concept. A player support system, if you think about this, promotes individualism. So each of the players, whether it's a bantam player or whether it's Connor McDavid, has a support system that he or she relies on. And that support system usually consists of parents. And if you think about it, when a parent gets involved with an individual player, often the conversation goes to that player as an individual. How did you play? How was the game? Why didn't the coach use you in this situation? What were you thinking of on the penalty kill? So the parents promote an individualism system. Following that, professional players are supported by player agents, which are very much a need in our game, but they tend to support the individual. We just have to look at the contracts that are handed out and how the agents deal with individuals on a nightly basis. Following that, there's close family members. There's wives, there's children, there's girlfriends, post-game, pre-game. Those individuals tend to be very self-supportive. And what I mean by that is they're looking at their husband, their boyfriend, and they're supporting them as individuals. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that we have to admit that it happens. So I want everybody to think about the I in team. And I believe there is 20 I's in every team. And to have a successful group, you have to believe that, and you have to approach it on a daily basis. As we move forward, we're going to now talk about some of the buzzwords that are used in hockey: culture, communication, feedback, discipline, work ethic. You can go on and on. And I find that these words are used in locker rooms, they're used in meetings, they are used at coaches' conferences such as these, but they really don't have any backbone until you put definition to them. And you may have definition of each of these words, and you may have a real strong belief what each of these are, but unless your players believe in the exact same definition and the parents believe in the exact same definition, you will have conflict as time goes on. So getting together with the players, getting together with the parents, clarifying what each of these means, I think is really, really important. Culture, for one, is a very common word that's used at the National Hockey League level. It doesn't take you long to find it in any newspaper article, any TV coverage of an organization. And a lot of teams have tried to put it down on paper what culture is. And for me, culture isn't a group of words. Culture to me is a form of action. And live your culture. You don't define it through words, and you live it on a daily basis. You live it on a moment basis, and you have to react to it. But putting definition to each of your buzzwords is really important. I want to give you another example. If you walk into the locker room, you may be coaching the Kelowna Rockets in the Western Hockey League, and your team just doesn't have it tonight. And you ask your players to work harder. We got to work harder. We're getting outworked. Basically, any individual on the planet can walk in there and tell the players that. They're getting nothing from you as a coach. If you give them a form of your definition, you know what, we've got to be first on the forecheck, and we've got to hunt some loose pucks down, which means we've got to work harder. At least it paints a picture for them. And it gives definition to your work hard picture that you're trying to paint. So that's just one example of how buzzwords are used without any definition. And players hear them all the time. They basically ignore them because they hear it so much. Feedback. Communication, it's something that's really, really important to the player, the individual right now, and the players hunt it out. I'm going to give you, again, examples at the National Hockey League level. As soon as the game is over, they can get out of their equipment really fast. They get into the trainer's room, get their treatments or do whatever. But not long after they're out of their equipment, showered, are they looking at their phones. And I believe that each of these individuals is looking for feedback. They're looking to see who has responded to their game that night. And again, let's go back to the parents. 90% of the parents see it through rose-colored glasses. They're going to get a real strong sense of feedback from the parent. There may be the crazy parent that is all over that individual, but with that usually becomes the secondary parent, whether it's the mother or the father, that's there to repair things and puff it all up again. So that's the first form of feedback that players look for or from. The second thing is through agents. If you're at the pro level, certainly they watch games, they know what's going on, they follow the stats, and often they are giving them feedback. Most of the feedback in that situation tends to be positive. At the National Hockey League level, social media is also important. And I know that when individuals go and look at that, it's quite easy to swipe the negative comments away and only get the positive comments. So why am I telling you this? I believe that players at all levels hunt feedback and they look for positive feedback. There's nothing wrong with that. Keep that in mind as a coach. Be prepared to give that to the players when they deserve it. But also understand, by the time you get to the player, to constructively sit down and talk to him about his game. Often his game is tainted a little bit by the overabundance of positive feedback. We won, they lost. So this is for minor hockey league coaches. Often when I listen to parents talk about a tournament on the weekend or an important playoff game, whether it be Bantam Pee Wee hockey, they assume that they played the game. And it's interesting because when the team or their son or daughter won, they include themselves. They say, we won. We won the tournament in Toronto, or we went to Dallas and we won 7 of 10 games. If it doesn't go so well, and this again is how parents think, if it doesn't go so well, it's they lost. It wasn't Timmy or Johnny or Sarah lost. It's they lost. The group lost, but they never include themselves in the defeat part or in the failure part. And that's just how parents react to situations. It's natural for them to do that, but understand that that's what's going to come out of their mouths, and maybe figure out a way to deal with that, to take them out of the game and simply to say to them, hey, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you didn't play the game. Your son, Tim, or your daughter, Sarah, played the game, and they did a tremendous job. Or we struggled a little bit, but we're going to fix it as we practice this week. And I think you can have better communication with the parents early in the year by telling them you're going to do that. One of the big questions that always comes up is, how did you play? As a parent that isn't around my son all the time. I don't get to see him play all the time. I make a phone call, and often the first question that I ask him is, I say, Tyson, how was the game? And one of the first things that comes out of his mouth is he says, well, I think I played okay. And I answer by saying, I didn't ask you how you played. I asked you what the game was like. How was the game? Was it fast? Was it hard? Was it strong? Did you start well as a team? Did you fall behind? And then we get to his play. And inevitably, when you ask any individual, including at the NHL level, how did you play? You're going to get a very generic, middle of the range answer. No individual wants to put himself on the table unless he was the first star, lit up the game. It's really easy for him to say, I played a really good game. But for the other 90% of the individuals, you're going to get, I thought I was okay. I thought I played okay. And I think for you as a coach or for you as a parent, that's a great opportunity for you to jump in at that moment and say, okay is fine, but we've got to push it beyond okay next night. Next time I ask you the question, I want you to expand. I don't want you to answer it the same way. And that leads to self-evaluation. Once you get the players to self-evaluate, you're really getting a lot more out of them. They're not living in a fantasy world, and you can help them simply by asking the question, how did you play the first time? And accepting the answer, and then getting them to expand after that, but constructively, positively. Be careful with the words you use, but I think you can help the player in those situations. Now, as we move forward, a couple other areas that talking about coaching today, tomorrow, and beyond, rules, team enforcement, ethical and moral responsibility. Obviously, society is changing for the better, in my belief, as we move forward in every aspect, equality, the right to play. And I think as coaches, we have to accept that responsibility moving forward. We accept the responsibility for us as individuals, us as coaches, me, I. But after that, we also have to enforce what's acceptable and unacceptable on our team. And that's in every situation. That's at the rink, that's in hotels, that's on buses, team meals. The ethical and moral responsibility for your squad starts with you. And you have to live it, you have to define it, you have to police it. And it's not always comfortable, but if you can establish that at a very early point with your team or in your coaching career, and you live that way, you live correctly, you have a real good chance of having players follow your lead. But just know that it is essential, and it's a very, very important part of us accepting the job as a coach. When it comes to the rules, team rules, I believe the more rules you have, the more enforcement you have, the more conflict you have. And right underneath that, I put fight the right fight. The days of coaches saying, I don't want players to wear hats, no earrings are allowed. That's out the window. That doesn't exist anymore. But in my day, that did. And I don't think fighting those fights are the right fights anymore. Set some really simple rules, some real straightforward rules that everybody has an easy time accepting and living towards. I always say start with the star player. For example, at the National Hockey League level, we may be in Game 7 of the playoffs. Connor McDavid may be 5 minutes late to a meeting for a very good reason. And if we say that you're going to miss a period of play or you're going to sit out a game, if you're late for a meeting, we have to live with that. And so always start with your star player. Decide what the rules will look like if he or she broke them. That's not fair. It's not equal, but it will allow you to do your job easier. And it doesn't mean that you bend the rules for the star player. Connor McDavid may have missed that meeting for a very poor reason. Now we have to deal with it, or our culture will fade. So just keeping that in mind, that team rules and enforcement are really, really important. And the ethical and moral responsibility that you have takes precedent over any system, any tactic that you use. Let's move forward now and talk about meetings. Meetings with teams, team meetings, individual meetings, parental meetings, agent meetings, whatever it might be. Those moments are really, really important. Don't take those moments lightly, and certainly be prepared for them. As we move forward, they become more and more important as players get older and older. And often what is said and what is heard can be two different things. So there's a few things that I think are really, really important when it comes to meetings. Clarity and to the point is very important. If you have a point to get across to an individual player or parent, be very clear about it. Be precise. Do not beat around the bush. They may not like what you have to tell them. They may be very, very happy with what you have to tell them. But in either case, make sure that you tell them very clearly. And just keep in mind when you do meet with individuals or teams or parents that all eyes are on you. There's other people that are aware the meeting's happening. They generally know why. If I'm meeting with Anse Kopitar and he's been in a slump, most of the players understand that the coach is talking to Anse about his negative play. I may be talking to Trevor Moore about how well he's playing. Again, most of the players see that, hear about it, and know why they're meeting. And with that becomes consequences. The players are looking to see how you react pre-meeting and post-meeting. Does ice time go up? Does ice time go down? Is there conflict between you and that individual, you and that parent? So just remember, each meeting that you have as a coach will affect the group as a whole, or at least many of the other individuals that see you in that situation. Location and timing of your meeting, I think, is really important. Try and take all of the emotion out of it. You may be having a conflict on the bench with an individual or a player for whatever reason. Can you get to a period break? Can you get through the night and then deal with it, take the emotion out of it, and try and fix it at that point? Or is it something that has to be dealt with at that moment? If you're emotionally charged, maybe have an assistant coach or a trainer deal with the situation, trying to get the player to cool down. Your dealings with the officials, location, timing, again, how you act and what you show your team is also a reflection on you. So location, timing, choice of words, all really, really important when it comes to meeting with individual players, having team meetings, or also meetings with parents. Ice time. Ice time, I think, is a really interesting topic. Often you hear about it. The only thing that the coach has over his players is ice time. Ice time can be used as a reward. It can be used as discipline. Yes, it can. Should it always be? No. I think that when you think about certain situations, yes, ice time can be dished out because of disciplinary situations. And then there's other times where it shouldn't be. But the first thing that you have to think about is, what type of team are you? Are you a development team? Are you a young bantam team where everybody needs ice time? Or are you the Los Angeles Kings or the Edmonton Oilers, where certain individuals likely need to play more because the win is very, very important? Figure out where you fit in the coaching spectrum. Figure out what type of team you are. Figure out what your mandate is as a coach, and then determine how ice time should be divvied up and earned. Players should be treated fairly, but not equally. I don't think equality exists when it comes to ice time. It's virtually impossible in the game of hockey to have 20 individuals come out at the same amount of time, same amount of power play, penalty kill, special teams, whatever it might be. It just doesn't exist. So make sure that the players and the parents understand that you're going to treat each of them fairly, but not equally. And you'll have a better chance at success, not only with players, but individuals. Excuse me. The 5-minute rule was one that I believe Al McGinnis told me about. His son was growing up through minor hockey in the St. Louis area. And one of the coaches that was coaching him had a 5-minute rule. And I thought it was a really good rule. He shared it with each of the parents at the beginning of the year. He said, listen, there's 5 minutes of every night. We may play a 60-minute game. 55 minutes belongs to all the players, treated equal, roll the lines. But for 5 minutes a night, I'm going to choose to make certain decisions. Maybe your son will play more. Maybe your daughter will play less. I don't know how it's going to happen on any given night. I don't know when those 5 minutes will exist. Will it be the beginning of the game, the end of the game, the middle of the game, on the power play? I don't know. But allow me to use those 5 minutes to prepare a young player for what might lie ahead. And sometimes using that rule will mitigate parental pain, if you will, disgruntled parents because their son or daughter wasn't out in the last 5 minutes or didn't play on the power play. You can simply go to them and say, listen, that was the time of game where I used the 5 minutes. I thought it was really important for he or she not to be out there and learn to deal with it. Or the reverse can happen. Maybe the star player isn't out for that power play or out for the last 5 minutes, and a role player is. And you could use it for that as well. But I do think that takes the conflict away from parent and player. Make everybody important. And a very simple statement, but sometimes hard to do. And obviously, ice time is one way of doing it, one way of showing that everybody's important. But there's other ways of doing it too. You may have a starting lineup announcement that goes out for each and every game. We do that in Los Angeles, and we rotate it around. It's not always the captains or the assistants or the star players. Quite often, it could be the really important role player that maybe only gets 8 minutes a night, but he gets his opportunity to read the starting lineup. The way you put your lines up for practice, if you post them, don't always put that fourth line right winger down on the fourth line. Move his line up to the top. Make him feel important. Make him feel good. Can you develop a secondary power play unit just so some individuals feel like they're getting an opportunity? They feel really, really important. Eye contact, word contact with every individual. Don't keep migrating to the very easy individuals. Every team has them. There's players, male, females on every team that are easy to talk to, and you feel like you make a very easy contact with them. You can overdo it at times, and it sends the wrong message to everybody else. Find the individual that's maybe a little more reserved, doesn't have many words, doesn't talk a lot, and make contact with them. They'll appreciate it. They'll feel important, but make sure that you're aware of it. We're so busy that we often overlook that. The last thing I want to talk about in the ice time section is the effects of charity ice time. Your team is up 7-1, and all of a sudden you're playing individuals, that you haven't played all night. Sometimes that can backfire. Your team is down 5-1 or 4-2, and somebody scores an empty netter, and all of a sudden the fourth line that hasn't been on the ice for the last 10 or 15 minutes of the night, out it comes. They're cold. The game is basically over for the last 15 minutes of what's left on the clock, and you call the fourth line out. That can be very harmful to you as a coach, to the players themselves. Just keep in mind that charity ice time often has more of a negative effect than a positive effect. So think about that as you're throwing around ice time in extreme moments. Rolling the four lines, keeping it as balanced as possible, gives you the best chance of at least at minor hockey, keeping a group happy and everybody on the same page. As I move forward now, I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of opportunities that I had as a young coach to run into individuals and some advice that I was given. And Bob Strum, there's probably not a lot of people on this call or on this Zoom that know who Bob Strum is, but he was a coach in the Western Hockey League, well-known hockey guy in Western Canada, involved at the pro level. I remember seeing him as a very young coach, and he said, Todd, if I could give you any advice, just know how a team works. He says, when you have 20 individuals on a team, there's always going to be 5 individuals that really like you. They buy into everything that you're selling, everything that you're saying. They'll try and make it work. He said, then there's 10 of those 15 that really, they don't care. They're swayed one way or the other. They're honest. They're going to work hard. And then there's 5 individuals, for whatever reason, they're not happy with you as a coach. They're not pleased with how things are going. And he said the thing that will allow you to have success as a coach is keeping the 5 negative individuals away from the 10 that don't really care. And I approached the game that way for a lot of years. And what I realized, there's a lot of truth to that. But I also think that the 10 individuals, the closer you can get them to the 5 that really count and that are really buying into it, they'll bring the 5 negative ones along. So I changed that a little bit on my own. The other thing that Jacques Lemaire taught me when I started coaching the Minnesota Wild farm team is that frustration exists in every coach. You're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to be unhappy with the performance of individuals, the performance of your team. And you're allowed to carry that emotion with you for a very short period of time. After that, you've got to park it and you've got to love every player again the next morning. And by showing that love, you show them that you believe in them and that emotionally you're not going to be tied to either a bad game or their mistakes. You're willing to give them another chance. And another chance exists for every individual on a team, especially when you play an 82-game schedule. So keep that in mind. In closing, obviously today's game is evolving. What we talked about today probably won't exist tomorrow for many different reasons, and beyond, it's going to change immensely. So find ways to keep current. Find people that can move you along the spectrum. If you're standing still and doing the same things over and over again, if you maintain the same beliefs without being flexible, you're probably falling behind. So with that, I'm going to close my presentation. I appreciate everybody's time. I hope you've enjoyed a different topic over and above the system presentations that exist on an ongoing basis. Good luck with your coaching career. Good luck with your teams. And hopefully we cross paths down the road.